The massive space station hung in the void above Zentara Prime like a crystal flower made of metal and light. Inside its gleaming halls, beings from across the galaxy gathered for what they believed would be another routine meeting of the Galactic Council. They were wrong. Ambassador Crickstall of the Vorthic Empire stood before the assembled delegates, his scaled skin shimmering under the artificial lights. His yellow eyes held a weight that made even the most arrogant council members lean forward in their seats. The Vorthak were known for their careful words and measured thoughts, which made his urgent tone all the more disturbing. "Honored delegates," Crickstall began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber, "I bring news of a discovery that will change everything we thought we knew about young species." He paused, letting his words sink in. "My scouts have been observing a world in the outer rim, the third planet of a yellow star system they call Sol. The inhabitants call themselves humans." A ripple of mild interest passed through the assembly. New species were discovered regularly, and most proved to be either primitive or easily absorbed into the galactic community. The Xanthari delegate, a tall being with multiple eyes arranged across her elongated skull, waved a tentacled appendage dismissively. "Surely another simple species seeking trade and protection," she said, her voice carrying the musical tones of her people. "What makes these humans different from the countless others?" Crickstall's expression grew darker. "They are not simple. They are not peaceful. They are something we have never encountered before." He activated a holographic display showing images from Earth. The delegates saw cities, forests, oceans, and what appeared to be a normal inhabited world. "They look soft," observed the Draxan representative, a massive creature with chitinous armor and predatory eyes. "Weak. Their technology appears primitive." "That is what I thought," Crickstall replied. "My scouts studied their history, their culture, their development. What we found should terrify every civilized being in this galaxy." The hologram shifted, showing scenes of human conflict throughout history. "They do not fight just for resources or territory as we do. They fight for ideas. They fight for concepts that exist only in their minds." The chamber fell silent as the delegates watched images of human warfare. Unlike the clean, efficient conflicts between galactic civilizations, human wars were brutal, prolonged, and seemingly endless. The hologram showed battles fought in mud and blood, cities reduced to rubble, entire populations mobilized for war. "They have created weapons capable of destroying their own world," Crickstall continued, "not accidentally, but deliberately. They built these weapons knowing they could end all life on their planet, and they built them anyway. They call this balanced terror, and somehow it has kept them from destroying themselves." The Ethon delegate, a peaceful being of pure energy contained in a crystalline form, pulsed with confusion. "This makes no sense. No rational species would develop such capability. It violates every principle of survival. Rational is not a word I would use to describe humans," Crickstall said grimly. "They are capable of incredible kindness and devastating cruelty, sometimes within the same individual. They will sacrifice everything for their offspring, yet they also sacrifice their offspring for their beliefs. They are paradoxes wrapped in flesh." Meanwhile, millions of light years away, Commander Jake Morrison sat in the communication center of Luna Base, humanity's first major off-world installation. The base orbited Earth's moon, a testament to human determination to reach beyond their home planet. Morrison was a career military officer who had spent his life preparing for threats from Earth. He never expected the threat to come from the stars. "Sir, we're picking up something unusual," reported Lieutenant Lisa Rodriguez, his tactical officer. She was young but sharp, with the kind of quick thinking that made her invaluable in the communication center. "Deep space sensors are detecting organized transmissions from multiple sources. The pattern suggests coordinated communication between several different technologies." Morrison moved to her station, studying the data flowing across her screens. "How many sources?" "At least 12 distinct transmission types, possibly more," Rodriguez replied. "They're not trying to hide their communications. It's like they don't care if we detect them." Communications specialist Tony Walsh looked up from his console, his face pale. Commander, I've been analyzing the signal patterns. These aren't random transmissions. They're structured, organized. This is a network. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. For decades, humanity had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it seemed not only were they not alone, but they were surrounded by civilizations advanced enough to maintain galaxy-wide communications. Are they talking about us? I can't decode the languages yet, Walsh replied. But there are repeated references to our solar system coordinates and what appears to be data about Earth. Morrison immediately contacted Earth. Within hours, President Helen Carter was in emergency session with her top advisors. General Rick Hansen, a grizzled veteran of Earth's last major conflict, studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. They're watching us, Hansen said bluntly. The question is why? Admiral Susan Blake, commander of Earth's small but growing space fleet, leaned forward. More importantly, what do they want? President Carter was a former diplomat who had spent her career believing in peaceful solutions. She had won election on a platform of unity and cooperation. Now she faced the possibility that humanity's first contact with alien life might not be the peaceful exchange she had always hoped for. We need to prepare for every possibility, Carter said. Admiral Blake, what's the status of our defensive capabilities? Limited but growing, Blake replied honestly. We have 17 military vessels capable of deep space operations plus the civilian ships we could convert if necessary. Our weapon systems are designed for ship-to-ship combat, not planetary defense. And if they're hostile, Blake's expression was grim, then we'll make them regret underestimating us. Back on the Galactic Council station, Krickstall was concluding his warning. I have observed 47 species in my lifetime. I have seen the rise and fall of civilizations. I have watched as proud empires crumbled and humble peoples rose to greatness. In all that time, I have never encountered a species like these humans. He paused, letting his words carry weight. They are not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but they have something we lack. They have a refusal to accept defeat that goes beyond reason. They will fight impossible odds not because they believe they can win, but because they believe they must try. The Draxan delegate laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. One world against the galaxy, let them try. Krickstall's eyes fixed on the Draxan with something approaching pity. That is exactly what I was afraid you would say. 3 months had passed since Ambassador Krickstall delivered his warning to the Galactic Council. The words had been recorded, filed, and largely ignored by most of the assembled delegates. The Draxan Confederation, however, had taken notice for all the wrong reasons. Supreme War Leader Zephox stood in the command center of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge, studying holographic displays of the Sol system. His massive form cast long shadows across the bridge as his crimson eyes focused on the small blue planet that had captured his attention. The Draxans were a proud warrior race who had built their empire through conquest and intimidation. They had successfully subjugated 47 worlds using the same simple formula: arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and crush any resistance quickly and brutally. The Vorthic ambassador spoke of these humans as if they were dangerous. Zephox rumbled to his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vrask. I see only another weak species ripe for conquest. Vrask, smaller but no less vicious than his leader, studied the tactical reports. Their technology is indeed primitive, War Leader. Their largest vessels are smaller than our escort ships. Their weapons appear to be basic projectile and energy systems. They have no shield technology that we can detect. Perfect, Zephox said with satisfaction. The Confederation needs new slave worlds, and this system has rich resources. We will demonstrate to the galaxy that the Draxans do not fear ghost stories told by nervous diplomats. The Draxan fleet consisted of 300 vessels, each one a testament to their military might. The ships were designed not just for war but for terror, with angular hulls covered in weapon arrays and armor plating that could withstand most known weapons. It was a force that had never known defeat, Captain. Danny Cooper was conducting a routine patrol mission aboard the exploration vessel, New Horizons when his sensors detected the approaching alien fleet. The ship was one of humanity's newest designs, built for long-range exploration and first contact scenarios. Cooper had dreamed of this moment his entire career, but not under these circumstances. "Captain, we have multiple contacts approaching from the edge of the system," reported Navigator Amy Patterson, her voice tight with tension. "I count at least 200 vessels, possibly more. They're moving in formation." Cooper moved to the sensor station where engineer Carlos Martinez was running every scan he could. "What are we looking at, Carlos?" "Big ships, Captain, really big. The smallest ones are twice our size. They're not trying to hide their approach. If anything, they want us to see them coming." Security Chief Ryan Bell stepped forward, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. "Orders, sir?" Cooper had trained for this moment, but training could never fully prepare someone for humanity's first contact with hostile aliens. "Send a message to Earth Command? Full priority? Then hail the lead vessel." The response came within minutes. A holographic image of a massive, reptilian creature appeared on the bridge's main screen. Zifox's presence was intimidating even through the communication link, his predatory eyes scanning the human bridge with obvious disdain. "Primitive beings." "Of the third planet," Zifox began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "I am Supreme War Leader Zifox of the Draxan Confederation. You will immediately surrender your world and all colonial territories to Draxan authority." Cooper felt his crew tense around him. These were explorers and scientists, not warriors. But they were still human. "I am Captain Danny Cooper of the United Earth vessel New Horizons." "What gives you the right to make such demands?" Zifox's laugh was a harsh sound that made the bridge speakers crackle. "Right? We have the right of superior force. Look around you, human. You face the might of the Draxan fleet. Your primitive vessels cannot hope to match our technology. And if we refuse, then you will face total annihilation. You have 72 of your planetary rotations to comply. Submit to Draxan authority, accept your place as a client species, and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and we will make your extinction a lesson for other worlds that might consider defying us." Cooper looked at his crew. These people had left Earth to explore the stars, to seek out new life and new civilizations. They had found both, but not in the way they had hoped. He thought of his wife, Sarah, back on Earth, of the children in the colony schools, of the millions of humans who had never asked for this fight. "This is Captain Danny Cooper of the United Earth vessel New Horizons," he said, his voice carrying to every human settlement in the system. "We have received your ultimatum. Here is our response. Come and take it." The transmission cut off, leaving Zifox staring at a blank screen. Sub-Commander Vrask shifted uncomfortably. "War Leader, perhaps we should have expected defiance from a species the Vorthek warned us about." "Defiance means nothing without the power to back it up," Zifox replied. "Begin preparations for planetary bombardment. We will make an example of these humans." Meanwhile, Cooper's message was racing through human space at light speed. On Earth, President Carter convened an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. On Mars, Colony Supervisor Bill Stevens began converting mining equipment into weapons. On Europa Station, Administrator Maria Gonzalez organized civilian evacuations while simultaneously coordinating with military planners. The message, "Come and take it," became humanity's rallying cry. It appeared on news broadcasts, social media, and official government communications. Children too young to understand the implications drew pictures of human ships facing alien invaders. Adults who had never held weapons began training with whatever they could find. Dr. Kevin Wright led a team of scientists at the Luna Research Facility in a desperate attempt to understand alien technology from the sensor readings New Horizons had transmitted. His colleagues, Dr. Patricia Kim and Dr. Alan Foster, worked alongside him, analyzing every scrap of data they could gather. "Their ships are massive, but they seem to rely on brute force rather than elegance," Dr. Kim observed. "Look at these energy signatures. They're powerful but inefficient." "That might be our advantage," Wright replied. "They're used to overwhelming their enemies with superior firepower." They've never had to be clever about it. General Hansen coordinated the military response from Earth's command center. The entire human fleet was mobilized, every available ship pressed into service. Civilian vessels were hastily converted to military use, their holds filled with whatever weapons could be manufactured in the time remaining. "We're outnumbered and outgunned," Hansen told his staff. "But we're fighting for our homes, our families, our entire species. That has to count for something." Admiral Blake commanded the fleet. From her flagship Defiance, knowing that the coming battle would determine humanity's fate. Her ships were smaller and less advanced than the alien vessels, but they were crewed by humans who had grown up hearing stories of underdogs who refused to surrender. As the 72 hours counted down, both sides prepared for war. The Draxans saw it as a simple extermination mission, another conquest to add to their long list of victories. The humans saw it as a fight for survival, a chance to prove that Earth's children would not go quietly into the night. Neither side fully understood what they were about to unleash. The 72 hours had passed like a nightmare that refused to end. The Draxan fleet moved into the Sol system with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. Supreme War Leader Zephox stood on his command bridge, watching as his 300 vessels took their attack positions near Mars. The red planet hung in space like a drop of blood, a fitting backdrop for what he expected to be a swift and decisive victory. "War Leader, we are detecting human vessels approaching," reported Subcommander Vrask, his voice carrying a hint of surprise. "They appear to be moving to engage us." Zephox turned to study the tactical display, his predatory eyes focusing on the small formation of human ships. There were perhaps 50 vessels in total, a mixture of military ships and converted civilian craft. They looked tiny compared to the massive Draxan warships, like insects preparing to attack a dragon. "Fascinating," Zephox rumbled. "They actually intend to fight us. I had expected them to surrender once they saw our full strength." Admiral Susan Blake commanded the human fleet from her flagship Defiance, knowing that every person under her command was probably going to die in the next few hours. The bridge was eerily quiet as her crew prepared for battle. These were professional soldiers and officers who had trained for this moment, but training could never fully prepare someone for humanity's first interstellar war. "Admiral, all ships report ready for combat," announced her tactical officer, Commander Lisa Rodriguez. The young officer had been promoted rapidly as humanity scrambled to build a space fleet, but her steady voice betrayed no fear. "Signal the fleet," Blake ordered. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for Earth, for the colonies, for everyone who can't fight back. Make every shot count." Captain Steve Miller commanded the destroyer Vigilant, one of the newer ships in the human fleet. His crew of 200 had volunteered for this mission, knowing the odds against them. They were engineers, technicians, and soldiers who had left comfortable lives to stand between their home and an alien invasion. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported his sensor officer. "Draxan cruiser, approximately 4 times our mass. Target their engine section," Miller ordered. "If we can't destroy them, maybe we can slow them down." The first shots of the war were fired by the Draxans. Massive energy beams lanced across space, striking the human formation with devastating force. The destroyer Courage, commanded by Captain Beth Wilson, took a direct hit to her main reactor. The explosion could be seen from Mars as the ship disintegrated in a ball of nuclear fire, but the humans fought back with a fury that surprised the Draxans. Human weapons were smaller and less powerful, but they were accurate and relentless. The cruiser Determination, captained by Noah Franklin, closed to point-blank range with a Draxan battleship, trading shots that would have been impossible for any sane commander to attempt. "Sir, we're taking heavy damage," reported Franklin's engineer, Chief Petty Officer Janet Cooper. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. We're losing atmosphere." "Seal what you can," Franklin replied, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "We're not done yet." The Determination's weapons pounded the Draxan ship's shields, each shot weakening them further. When the shields finally failed, human missiles struck the alien vessel's hull, causing secondary explosions that rippled along its length. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Torres led Fighter Squadron Delta 7 in a desperate attack on the Draxon formation. Her small craft were fast and maneuverable, but they were also fragile. One hit from a Draxon weapon would vaporize a human fighter. "Stay close and keep moving," Torres ordered her pilots. "Don't give them a steady target." Lieutenant Kate Johnson flew wing position on Torres, her fighter dancing between the massive alien ships like a bird avoiding thunder. She had joined the Space Force to explore the stars, not to fight for humanity's survival, but she had adapted to the reality of war. With the same determination that had gotten her through flight training. "I'm hit," came the voice of Lieutenant Brad Nelson over the communication channel. "Lost my starboard engine, I'm going in." Johnson watched as Nelson's fighter spiraled toward a Draxon cruiser, its pilot apparently unconscious or dead. But at the last moment, the fighter's engines flared to life, and Nelson guided his damaged craft directly into the alien ship's weapon array. The explosion took out half the cruiser's guns. "Tell them we were here," Nelson's final transmission echoed. Across the human fleet, the battle raged for 6 hours. Human ships fought with a desperation that amazed and confused the Draxons. When the cruiser Determination suffered critical damage to her main reactor, Captain Franklin made a decision that would become legend in human space. "All hands, this is the captain," Franklin announced over the ship's communication system. "We're finished as a fighting unit, but we're not finished as human beings. Prepare for ramming speed." The dying human ship accelerated directly toward the Draxon flagship, its remaining weapons firing continuously. Zephox watched in disbelief as the smaller vessel approached his ship's engine section, its crew refusing to surrender even in the face of certain death. "Stop them," Zephox ordered, but it was too late. The Determination struck the Draxon flagship with the force of a meteor, its nuclear reactor detonating on impact. The explosion tore through the alien ship's engine array, leaving it crippled and drifting in space. Sub-Commander Vrask helped his injured commander to his feet as damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. "War Leader, we have lost 17 ships destroyed and 43 damaged. The humans have lost 31 vessels." "Impossible," Zephox snarled. "They are primitives fighting with inferior technology. How could they inflict such damage?" "They fight differently than any species we have encountered," Vrask replied carefully. "They do not retreat when faced with superior force. They seem to fight harder when the odds are against them." The human fleet was indeed shattered. Admiral Blake's flagship Defiance was badly damaged, her crew working frantically to keep the ship operational. Captain Miller's destroyer Vigilant was listing heavily, her hull breached in a dozen places. Fighter Squadron Delta 7 was reduced to 3 operational craft. But the humans had achieved something more important than victory. They had captured several Draxon crew members when the cruiser Vengeance, commanded by Captain Sandra Mitchell, had managed to board a damaged enemy ship. More importantly, they had demonstrated that humanity would fight to the death rather than surrender. "Admiral, we're receiving a message from Earth Command," reported Commander Rodriguez. "They're ordering U.S. to fall back to defensive positions around Earth." Blake nodded grimly. "Signal the fleet, we're going home." As the battered human ships limped back toward Earth, Supreme War Leader Zephox stared at the tactical display showing his losses. In 6 hours of combat, a primitive species had inflicted more damage on his fleet than any enemy in Draxon history. "Prepare a message to the Confederation Council," he told Vrask. "Tell them we need reinforcements. These humans are not what we expected." The first battle of the war was over, but both sides knew it was only the beginning. The weeks following the first battle transformed human civilization in ways no one had expected. The battered remnants of Admiral Blake's fleet limped back to Earth, carrying more than just wounded crew members and damaged ships. They brought something far more valuable: captured Draxon technology and prisoners, including Sub-Commander Vrask himself. Dr. Kevin Wright stood in the makeshift laboratory aboard Luna Base, staring at pieces of alien technology that would have been science. Fiction just months before? His team had grown from 3 scientists to over 200 researchers, engineers, and technicians from across human space. The pressure to understand their enemy's capabilities had turned the quiet research facility into humanity's most important military installation. The energy patterns are completely different from anything we've seen, reported Dr. Patricia Kim, her eyes red from weeks of continuous work. Their power systems are based on principles we don't even have names for yet. Engineer. Maya Lopez had been working on the captured Draxon shield generators for 18 straight hours. She was a civilian contractor who had volunteered for military service when the war began, bringing with her a background in quantum physics that was proving invaluable. "I think I understand how their shields work," Lopez announced, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. "They create a field that deflects energy and matter around the ship. But the field has to be constantly adjusted based on incoming threats." Dr. Wright moved to her workstation, studying the complex equations she had written across 3 display screens. "What are you thinking, Maya?" "Our quantum computers process information differently than their systems," she explained. "We use probability calculations and uncertainty principles. Their technology is based on absolute measurements and fixed parameters. If we can introduce quantum uncertainty into their shield calculations, we could overload their systems, right?" Finished, his excitement growing. They've never faced an enemy that thinks in quantum terms. Meanwhile, in the secure detention facility deep beneath Earth's surface, Colonel Peter Davis was conducting his daily interrogation of Sub-Commander Vrask. The Draxon officer had been defiant at first, but weeks of isolation and the reality of his situation had begun to wear down his resistance. "Your fleet took heavier losses than you expected," Davis observed, settling into the chair across from his prisoner. "That must have been a surprise." Vrask's reptilian features showed no emotion, but Davis had learned to read the subtle signs of tension in the alien's posture. "You fought with desperation, not skill." "Desperation is temporary, is it?" Davis asked. "Your people have conquered 47 worlds. How many of those species fought back the way we did?" "None," Vrask admitted after a long pause. "Most surrendered." "When they saw our fleet?" "Those that resisted were quickly overwhelmed, but we weren't overwhelmed, were we? We lost the battle, but we hurt you badly enough that you needed to call for reinforcements." Vrask's eyes narrowed. "You know of our communications?" Davis smiled grimly. "We know more than you think. We know that other species are watching this war. We know that some of them are placing bets on the outcome, and we know that none of them expected us to last this long." The interrogation was interrupted by an urgent message from President Carter's office. Davis left Vrask under guard and made his way to the Secure Communication Center, where he found Carter in conference with her senior advisors. "Colonel Davis," Carter began, "we've received an unusual transmission. It appears to be from the Vorthek ambassador who originally warned the Galactic Council about us." The holographic image of Ambassador Crixtal appeared on the main screen, his scaled features showing signs of stress. "President Carter, I am taking great personal risk by contacting you directly. The Galactic Council is watching your war with the Draxons with growing concern." "Concern about what?" Carter asked. "About what you represent," Crixtal replied. "In all recorded galactic history, no species has ever fought as your people have fought. Most civilizations surrender when faced with extinction. You seem to fight harder when defeat appears certain." General Hansen leaned forward. "What exactly are you telling us, Ambassador?" "I am telling you that you have changed the rules of galactic politics simply by existing. The Draxons were chosen as a test case, a way to measure human capabilities. But other species are now preparing for war if the Draxons fail." The implications of Crixtal's words sent a chill through the room. Admiral Blake, her arm still in a sling from injuries sustained in the first battle, spoke up. "How many species are we talking about?" "The Krillian hegemony controls 200 worlds. The Xanthari Collective has military forces that dwarf the Draxon fleet. The Mordic Empire has weapons that can destroy entire star systems." Crystal's image flickered as he transmitted across impossible distances. They are all watching you, and they are all afraid. Afraid of us? Carter asked. We're one world fighting for survival. You are one world that refuses to accept defeat, Crystal corrected. Do you understand what that means to species that have built their empires on the assumption that overwhelming force guarantees victory? Back in the Luna Base laboratory, Maya Lopez was making breakthrough after breakthrough. Her team, including technicians Alex Chun and Bobby Clark, had been working around the clock to understand not just Draxon technology, but the principles behind it. We've been thinking about this all wrong, Lopez announced to the assembled scientists. We've been trying to match their technology piece by piece. But we don't need to match it. We need to break it. She activated a holographic display showing the structure of Draxon's shield systems. Their shields are incredibly strong, but they're also incredibly rigid. They can't adapt to unexpected inputs. Our quantum computers can generate random patterns that their systems can't process. Dr. Wright studied the display with growing excitement. Are you saying we can turn our technological disadvantage into an advantage? Exactly, Lopez replied. They've spent centuries perfecting technology based on predictable inputs and measurable outputs. They've never faced an enemy that uses quantum uncertainty as a weapon. The news of the scientific breakthrough spread quickly through human space. On Mars, Governor Chris Anderson began organizing the colony's defenses with new hope. On Europa Station, Administrator Lisa Thompson coordinated with military planners to implement the new weapons, technology, but perhaps the most significant development came from an unexpected source. The captured Draxon prisoners, isolated from their command structure and faced with the reality of human determination, began to question everything they had been taught about warfare and conquest. Your species is insane, one of the captured Draxon engineers told his human interrogator. You fight battles you cannot win. You sacrifice lives for principles that exist only in your minds. You develop weapons that could destroy your own world. And yet we're still here, the human replied, still fighting, still refusing to surrender. The engineer's response was barely a whisper. That is what terrifies us. As the months passed, it became clear that the war was changing both sides in fundamental ways. The Draxons were learning that their traditional tactics of overwhelming force and quick victory were useless against an enemy that refused to acknowledge defeat. The humans were discovering that their greatest weapon was not their technology or their numbers, but their absolute refusal to give up. President Carter addressed the United Nations and colonial governments via hologram, her words carrying to every human settlement in the solar system. We didn't ask for this war, but we'll finish it. We will show the galaxy that humanity cannot be conquered, cannot be enslaved, and will never surrender. The revelation that would change everything was simple but profound. In a galaxy built on the assumption that superior force guaranteed victory, humans had introduced a new variable that no one had planned for. They had introduced hope. 6 months after the first battle near Mars, the human fleet had transformed beyond recognition. The ships that emerged from Earth's orbital shipyards bore little resemblance to the vessels that had faced the Draxon fleet in that desperate first encounter. These new warships carried hybrid human-alien technology that had been born from the marriage of captured Draxon systems and human quantum computing principles. Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the Retribution, watching as the assembled human fleet prepared for its first major offensive operation. The fleet now numbered over 100 vessels, each one equipped with the quantum disruption weapons that Dr. Maya Lopez and her team had developed. The ships were smaller than their Draxon counterparts, but they were faster, more maneuverable, and most importantly, they were crewed by humans who had learned to fight with desperate creativity. All ships report ready for jump, announced Commander Lisa Rodriguez, who had been promoted to serve as Blake's tactical coordinator. The young officer had survived the first battle and had become one of humanity's most experienced space combat veterans in the months that followed. Signal the fleet, Blake ordered. Today we stop running. Today we start taking the fight to them. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the stealth vessel Shadow Runner, one of the new designs that had emerged from human innovation. His ship was equipped with quantum cloaking technology that made it nearly invisible to Draxon sensors. Morrison's crew included some of humanity's best special operations personnel, soldiers who had volunteered for the most dangerous missions the war had to offer. "Approaching the Proxima system," reported his navigator, Lieutenant Amy Pattison. "Draxon fleet is holding position around the gas giant, just as intelligence predicted." Morrison studied the tactical display showing the enemy formation. Supreme War leader Zephox had established a massive staging area in the Proxima system, using it as a base to launch attacks on human colonies. The Draxon fleet had grown to over 400 vessels as reinforcements arrived from across their empire. "They're not expecting us," Morrison observed. "They think we're still licking our wounds back on Earth." The plan that was about to unfold had been developed by Colonel Mary Jackson, a tactical genius who had studied every recorded battle between spacefaring civilizations. Jackson had realized that aliens fought with predictable patterns based on honor and established military doctrine. Humans, however, had learned to fight dirty. "Phase 1 is a go," Morrison reported to Admiral Blake. "We're in position." The attack began with what appeared to be a standard human assault. Blake's main fleet jumped into the system and immediately engaged the Draxon forces in a head-on battle. The alien commanders, led by Supreme War Leader Zephox aboard his rebuilt flagship, responded exactly as the humans had hoped they would. "The humans are attacking with their full fleet," Sub-Commander Vrask reported, having been exchanged in a prisoner swap that had allowed him to return to Draxon service. "They appear to be attempting a direct assault on our position." "Foolish," Zephox replied, his confidence restored by the arrival of reinforcements. "They learned nothing from their previous defeat. Deploy the fleet in standard battle formation. We will crush them decisively this time." But the main fleet engagement was merely a distraction. While the Draxons focused their attention on Blake's ships, Morrison's stealth forces had infiltrated the enemy's rear lines. A dozen human vessels, invisible to enemy sensors, moved through the Draxon formation like ghosts. Captain Eric Williams commanded the destroyer Vengeance, one of the ships in Morrison's stealth group. His vessel was equipped with the latest quantum torpedoes, weapons that could phase through enemy shields and detonate inside their hulls. Williams had lost his brother in the first battle, and he carried that loss with him into every engagement. "Target the command ship," Williams ordered his weapons officer. "Make this one count." The quantum torpedoes struck Zephox's flagship without warning, phasing through the ship's shields as if they didn't exist. The explosions tore through the vessel's command center, killing dozens of senior officers and leaving the Draxon fleet without centralized coordination. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Torres, now leading the expanded fighter wing, had developed new tactics that took advantage of human pilots' ability to think creatively under pressure. Her pilots, including veterans like Lieutenant Jennifer Lopez and newcomers like Lieutenant Brad Nelson, flew their small craft between the massive alien vessels with suicidal precision. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy them," Torres reminded her pilots. "We're trying to confuse them. Make them think there are more of us than there actually are." The human fighters darted through the Draxon formation, their quantum jammers disrupting enemy communications and sensor systems. The aliens found themselves fighting blind, unable to coordinate their responses or even identify their targets clearly. Captain Sandra Mitchell commanded the heavy cruiser Indomitable, one of the new ships built specifically for this operation. Her vessel carried experimental weapons that could overload Draxon shield generators, leaving enemy ships vulnerable to conventional attacks. "Targeting the lead battleship," Mitchell announced. "All batteries fire." The quantum disruptors struck the Draxon vessel's shields, introducing uncertainty patterns that the alien systems couldn't process. The shields flickered and failed, leaving the massive ship defenseless against human missiles and energy weapons. Supreme War Leader Zephox watched in horror as his fleet disintegrated around him. The humans were fighting with tactics he had never seen before, attacking from multiple directions with weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. How are they doing this? He demanded of his surviving staff officers. Their weapons are passing through our shields. Our sensors cannot track their movements. War leader, we must retreat, Sub-Commander Vrask urged. We cannot fight an enemy we cannot see. The Draxan Confederation does not retreat, Zephox snarled, but even as he spoke, he could see that his fleet was being systematically destroyed. The battle lasted only 4 hours, but when it ended, the balance of power in the war had shifted dramatically. The Draxan fleet was not just defeated, but utterly destroyed. Only a handful of alien vessels escaped to carry word of the disaster back to their homeworlds. Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the debris field that had once been the pride of the Draxan military. Her fleet had suffered minimal casualties, a testament to the effectiveness of their new tactics and technology. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from the surviving Draxan ships, reported Commander Rodriguez. Blake considered the request. For a moment, the old Blake, the one who had fought desperately at Mars, might have accepted the surrenders. But the war had changed her, just as it had changed all of humanity. Negative, she replied. They came to our system to enslave or destroy us. They made the choice to fight. Now they live with the consequences. The remaining Draxan vessels were hunted down and destroyed, their crews given the same mercy they had planned to show to humanity. It was a harsh lesson, but one that the galaxy needed to learn. Captain Morrison's stealth ships had captured Supreme War Leader Zephox alive, along with thousands of his officers and crew. The prisoners were valuable for intelligence purposes, but they also served as proof of humanity's new capabilities. Signal Earth Command, Blake ordered. The Proxima system is secure. The Draxan fleet is destroyed. We're ready for Phase 2. The message that reached Earth was simple but profound. Humanity had stopped running. The prey had become the hunter, and the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The news of the Draxan fleet's complete destruction spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On the crystal spires of Zentara Prime, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 3 centuries. The assembled delegates, representing thousands of worlds and dozens of species, found themselves facing a reality that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare and civilization. Counselor Thex Ara of the Zenthari Collective stood before the assembly, her multiple eyes reflecting the holographic displays showing the aftermath of the battle at Proxima. The images were stark and undeniable, the debris field that had once been the pride of the Draxan military, the captured footage of human ships moving through alien formations like deadly phantoms, and most disturbing of all, the complete silence from what had been the Draxan Confederation's most powerful fleet. The implications are clear, Vixara announced, her musical voice carrying notes of barely controlled fear. These humans have not simply defeated the Draxans. They have annihilated them so completely that no vessel escaped to provide tactical intelligence about human capabilities. Elder Morden of the ancient Vorthic Empire shifted uncomfortably in his seat. As one of the galaxy's oldest and most cautious species, the Vorthak had survived for millennia by avoiding conflicts they could not win. Now they faced a species that seemed to rewrite the rules of what was possible. Ambassador Krikstal warned us, Morden said quietly. He told us that humans were different. We should have listened. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Helen Carter stood before the United Nations Assembly, addressing not just the representatives of Earth's nations, but the governors and administrators of humanity's growing colonial empire. The war had transformed human civilization in ways that went far beyond military technology. We did not seek this conflict, Carter began, her words being transmitted to every human settlement across the solar system. We offered peace and received ultimatums. We sought understanding and were threatened with extinction. But we have learned something important about ourselves and our place in the galaxy. Admiral Jake Morrison, promoted after Admiral Blake's retirement, commanded the human fleet from his flagship Indomitable. The ship was a marvel of hybrid technology, combining the best of human innovation with captured alien systems. Morrison's fleet now patrolled the former Draxan territories, establishing human authority over worlds that had once been part of an alien empire. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Ethon trading vessel Peaceful Current," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Tony Walsh. "They're requesting safe passage through our space." Morrison studied the request with the measured consideration of someone who had learned that every decision in space could have galactic consequences. The Ethon were a peaceful species of energy beings who had never shown aggression toward any other civilization. "Grant them safe passage," Morrison ordered, "and send a message to their government. Tell them that humanity remembers its friends." The message was more than diplomatic courtesy. In the months following the destruction of the Draxon fleet, humanity had begun to establish a new kind of galactic order. Unlike the traditional empires built on conquest and subjugation, the humans offered protection to peaceful species while making it clear that aggression would be met with overwhelming force. Dr. Maya Lopez, now serving as Earth's chief technology officer, worked with her expanded team to develop innovations that would have seemed impossible just a year before. The captured Draxon technology had been completely reverse-engineered and improved upon, creating weapons and defensive systems that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. "We're not just combining technologies," Lopez explained to President Carter during a briefing at the Luna Research Facility. "We're creating entirely new approaches to physics and engineering. The quantum principles we've discovered are revolutionizing everything from faster-than-light travel to planetary defense systems. The breakthrough that would change everything came from an unexpected source. The captured Draxon prisoners led by the former Supreme War leader Zephox had been held in comfortable but secure facilities on Earth. Over time, exposure to human culture and philosophy had begun to change their perspective on warfare and civilization. "Your species confuses." "U.S.," Zephox admitted during one of his regular sessions with Colonel Peter Davis. "You fight with absolute determination, but you also show mercy to defeated enemies. You develop weapons of incredible destruction, but you use them only when threatened. You could conquer the galaxy, but instead you seek to protect it." Davis had spent months studying Draxon culture and military doctrine. He had come to understand that the aliens' approach to warfare was based on predictable patterns that had served them well for centuries. But those patterns had made them vulnerable to an enemy that refused to follow the rules. "Maybe that's what the galaxy needs," Davis replied. "Someone who fights when necessary but doesn't fight for conquest." The transformation of human civilization accelerated as news of their victory spread. On Mars, Governor Tom Phillips oversaw the construction of massive shipyards that would make the Red Planet the center of human military production. On Europa, Director Christina Roberts led research teams that were developing new forms of faster-than-light communication, allowing real-time coordination across interstellar distances. But perhaps the most significant change was in humanity's role within galactic civilization. When the Krillian hegemony threatened the peaceful Ethon traders, human ambassador Paul Kennedy delivered a message that would become famous throughout the galaxy. "The humans remember their friends," Kennedy said simply. "We also remember those who threaten our friends." The Krillian fleet, larger and more powerful than anything the Draxons had possessed, withdrew without firing a shot. The message was clear: humanity would not tolerate aggression against peaceful species under their protection. Captain Julia Martinez commanded the human patrol vessel, vigilant as it monitored the border between human space and the territories of potentially hostile species. Her ship was equipped with the latest quantum sensors and weapon systems, but more importantly, it carried the authority of a species that had proven it could not be defeated. "Captain, we're monitoring communications from the Xanthari fleet," reported her sensor officer. "They're conducting military exercises near the Rigel system." Martinez studied the tactical display, noting the size and composition of the alien fleet. The Xanthari had been quiet since the destruction of the Draxon fleet, but intelligence suggested they were preparing for possible conflict with humanity. "Signal Earth Command," Martinez ordered. "Tell them the Xanthari are testing our response times." The response came within hours. A full human battle group, led by Admiral Morrison himself, arrived at the edge of Xanthari space. The alien fleet immediately ceased its exercises and withdrew to defensive positions around their homeworlds. Ambassador Krikstal, now serving as an unofficial liaison between humanity and the Galactic Council, reflected on the changes that had swept across the galaxy. The old order, built on the assumption that superior force guaranteed victory, had been replaced by something new and unprecedented. "We told them not to attack," Krikstal said to his aide as they watched human ships patrol the space lanes that had once been dominated by aggressive empires. "We warned them that humans were dangerous, but we never imagined they would become the ones keeping the peace." The story concluded with a scene that would have seemed impossible just 2 years before. Children on Earth attended schools where they learned about the galaxy they helped protect. Students like those taught by Mr. Frank Turner and Ms. Diana Scott studied star maps showing human patrol routes and allied civilizations, understanding that their species had earned its place not through conquest but through the simple refusal to surrender. The final message was broadcast from Earth to every corner of human space and beyond, carried by the faster-than-light communication networks that now connected hundreds of worlds. It was humanity's new promise to the galaxy, inscribed on every human vessel and repeated in every diplomatic contact. "We came in peace, we will leave in peace." The choice was never ours to make.